Clerk will call the roll.
Glenn Whitley, County Judge.
Here.
Roy Charles Brooks, Commissioner Precinct 1.
Present.
Andy H. Wynn, Commissioner Precinct 2.
Here.
Gary Fickus, Commissioner Precinct 3.
Here.
J.D. Johnson, Commissioner Precinct 4. Here. Constitutes a quorum.
Thank you. Our invocation today will be delivered by Pastor Wheeler, who is retired pastor from Capstone in Fort Worth. Also is one of the chaplains at our jail, so we appreciate very much your efforts there and appreciate you coming out today. After the invocation, please remain standing for our pledges.
Good morning. Let's pray. Let's pray. Father, we just thank you, first of all, for who you are. And that's a real, living, prayer-answering God, one who cares about the desires of his people. And Lord, it's apparent this morning by my invitation here that this body desires that you be present in all these proceedings, Lord. So accordingly, Lord, I ask that you impart wisdom and insight, supernatural insight and compassion and love as they go about the business of governing this county, Lord. Let all the decisions and the votes and the considerations be made according to your will, Lord. Fill this place with your Holy Spirit. And Lord, finally, I speak blessing over each and every person that serves this county, Lord. Give them peace in their lives and peace in their homes. Bless them richly, Lord, and reward them for their faithful service, not only to this county, but most importantly to you. And we thank you for these things in Jesus' mighty name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Pastor. Thank you, Pastor Wheeler. Announcements, Mr. Mays?
Thank you, Your Honor. We only have one announcement as relates to the agenda. You might note that we have a work session today, and the work session was originally scheduled for after closed. I believe that we'll be through court sooner than noon today, so our recommendation is that we take the work session and move that up to before closed. Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay. Court members, you have before you the minutes of our regular meeting of January the 14th.
Move for approval of the meeting minutes.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Under proclamations and recognition, Commissioner Brooks, I believe you have a resolution or a proclamation. Excuse me.
I move ratification of the proclamation for the Fort Worth celebration of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day. We had a magnificent weekend, and the proclamation has already been presented. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Larry Wilson's going to come forward now and recognize our 2013 Leadership Development Program participants. Good morning.
Very good. Good morning. So we're here today to recognize our 2013 Leadership Development participants. We had a smaller group this year than normal. 9 people completed the process. They attended classes once a month. They did a personal project outside their own area and presented that to their classmates and to others in attendance. You can see on your document that they go through certain classes to learn about county policy and learn about other areas within the county. And so we're going to call forth the 9 people and present them with a plaque and have them recognized by the court. Bradley Cunningham, Information Technology. Carol Huntley, County Clerk. Christy Barnacle, Information Technology. Jorge Sanchez, Public Health. Catherine Wyatt Martinez, Constable, Precinct 3. Kelly Wigley, Information Technology. Lynn Ortiz, and I believe Lynn, due to his job this morning, is not able to be with us. Teresa Parsons, Precinct 3 Commissioner's Office. And Valerie Philibert, Precinct 4 Maintenance. And that's our group for the day.
Hold on.
Katie, you want it? Come on up, Kay. Or Ann. What am I saying?
More photos in the halls. Thank you.
Thank y'all and congratulations
Thank
to one of y'all. Each one of y'all. Court members, you have before you the consent agenda. Before we go on, why don't we go ahead and receive and file this recognition leadership
So moved.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Now for the consent agenda.
Move approval.
Second. We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Mannion?
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the Court, we have one additional action item this morning under the Administrator's section. Item number 1, we're requesting that the court receive and file a letter to the Texas County Judge and Commissioners Association, their Continuing Education Committee, which certifies the completion of briefing sessions for calendar year 2013.
Move approval. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Ms. Tidwell? Good morning.
Good morning. We have 2 items for the court's consideration this morning. The first is the approval of release and substitution of the depository collateral, approximately $274,979,000 as outlined in your court communique.
Move approval.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
And our other item is to receive and file the auditor's report on the home rehabilitation program administered by the Community Development Department. I would like to make a couple of comments on that audit. First of all, I would say that the auditor's office is in disagreement with pretty much all of the department's response. This is not the place to go into that, so I'll work with Community Development to see if we can reach some common ground. But there are a couple of things in observation, too, that I would like to speak to. There are several statements in there that are not true. They question the way we did our audit, and I'd like to just clarify that for the court. There is a statement that we did our audit by only talking with the homeowners. This is not correct. We did go out and speak with the homeowners. We looked at all of the documentation, all of the information that was provided in all of the files by Community Development. We also met with the staff at Community Development at different times, maybe not as often or as frequent as might have been expected. There's also a comment that we did not accompany them on site to their inspections. Well, when we audit the district clerk, we don't go over to the district clerk's office and stand next to the individual that is processing the information and putting it in the GIM system. We don't go down to the tax office and stand next to the cashier who's processing the cash receipts. More than likely, if we did that, we would find very little wrong. We go out and we look at the information. We audit the controls, we audit the process, we speak with the people involved, we work with any and everyone to try to gather the information. The accompaniment or the processing and standing next to the people performing the work many times is not of value. We audit the controls and try to substantiate that the policies and practices that are identified are actually in place. The documentation of the information provided to us and our observations did not concur. Therefore, that's the result of our findings. We even went to the extent to go out and meet with partner agencies. We met with Six Stone staff that actually administer these programs. That's where the Assistant Director of CDD is going to work. So to say that we didn't do a thorough audit and that our findings are without merit, I take offense to that. So I just wanted to clarify that for the court this morning. I've been an auditor for over 30 years. This is one of the most difficult audits that I've ever tried to conduct, and I'll leave it at that.
Well, I hope that in meeting with the Community Development Department leadership, that y'all can come to some common ground. And I will leave it at that and move to receive and file the audit report.
I'll second. Are we going to get a follow-up report on this?
Yes, sir. I think that we feel strongly enough about our concerns that we want to make sure they're addressed, not that we're right, not that we have all the answers, but I think there is some room for improvement in this area, and that's all we're asking is that people be open to looking at that and not be defensive in regards to saying that there's nothing wrong and that we didn't do our work correctly. So we would be more than happy to work with the community development staff, the administrator's office, et cetera, to try to resolve that as best we can.
Mr. Maynes, I would like to ask that we have a follow-up on this in 30 or 60 days, no later than 60 days, that will bring some additional clarity or some additional resolution to some of these issues. Just because, I mean, there are just comments in there that are inconsistent, and I would like for us to get a little bit deeper into that and come back with some specific, either recommendations or how we're going to reconcile the two.
Yes, Your Honor, we'll do that.
Any other questions or discussions? Please vote.
Thank you.
Motion passes unanimously. Ray, I'm assuming you're after. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Ann, go ahead.
Hello.
Hi, Ann.
Good morning. We're asking your approval of the MOU that we have drafted with One Safe Place. The purpose is actually not just to help them apply for grants. It will make it easier for us, the DA's office in the county, to apply for grants. There was a grant we sought last year, but we could not complete the application process without an MOU, which we didn't have. It does not commit any funding in particular. It is aspirational in nature, and it protects the flexibility of both the current and future district attorneys to adjust as they see fit with their priorities and resources available. We'd request your approval.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Ms. Glenn?
I move to receive and file the personnel agenda.
Second. A motion and a second to receive and file the personnel agenda. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Good morning, and thank you.
Morning.
We have one additional item. We're asking the court to approve a waiver of terminal benefits for Ag Life Extension. The executive director separated from county service at the end of last year, which I learned on Tuesday of last week, with 320 vacation hours. We're requesting a waiver for 240 vacation hours effective January 15th. The cost to the general fund is approximately $4,100 excluding fringe benefits.
Move for approval. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank
Did
you.
we ever determine if we had to take any action regarding the new county extension agent?
It is on, it is on the personnel
Personnel
agenda.
agenda.
So we
Yes.
took it.
Yes, sir. We've dotted all the i's and crossed the t's.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Brewer.
Morning. Good morning.
Public Health is seeking your approval for Public Health Accreditation Board Letter of Support and approval to apply for National Public Health Accreditation.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Just that this will put us in the forefront of public health departments nationally, and it's a big step forward for our public health department, and I congratulate you.
Thank you.
Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Mr. Beecham.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
We have one item for your consideration this morning, and that is a bid award recommendation for bid 2014-010. This is our annual contract for the purchase of pickups, vans, and utility vehicles. Our recommendation would be to award on a per unit price basis, awarding Section 1 the pickups, Section 2 the vans, and Section 3 the utility vehicles to the primary vendors that shown in your court communique that meet all our specifications.
Move approval. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Commissioner Fickus, I believe you have several items.
Yes, I do. Talking about the interlocals?
Yeah.
Okay, Adams, I have an interlocal with the City of Keller on Mount Gilead. That'd be 8L, B, and C, and I move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
And I have a additional one with the City of Richland Hills on Poppy Road, right, Baker and Brooks. Move for approval.
Second. We have a motion and a second on, I'm assuming that's item 8L, B,
8L, D, and E.
1, D, and E. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Move approval of item 8, 2, A, and B of the interlocal agreement, City of Simpson Park.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on items 8L, 2A, and B. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Commissioner Fickus, are you going to address your item A at this time, or is that going to be later?
I can do it now,
Okay.
unless, I mean, did we get all interlocal?
Everybody else is, we're through.
I'm gonna, if it's okay, go down
Which one are we doing?
8L,
Station plan.
yeah.
Well, thank you. If y'all recall, back a few months ago, we had talked about coming together with some information on a transportation, not just a strategic plan, but just looking at bringing on a consultant. And I said I would volunteer to put some information together and bring it to the court. We've had a number of smaller meetings through the past few months with staff, and I think Commissioner Wynn and I met once and went over some things, and then involved Bill Riley with transportation and GK's office. So I think what we're hoping to do here is to talk about what all is involved in transportation to look at for the future. And there's I think some 5 key points we need to consider here. The first being that Tarrant County's going to double in population in the next 30 years. And what impact will this have on our major transportation facilities? Second item is planning today is critical for the future implementation of successful projects. The third is we need to think multimodal. We don't need to just look at the automobile, but transit, rail, aviation, freight. I would say seaports, but we don't have one here yet.
Commissioner, do you need
So-
to advance the slide?
Sir?
You need to advance the slide?
Not yet.
Not yet, okay.
But I will in a moment. To succeed, we're going to need professional help. And I believe Tarrant County has a responsibility, an opportunity, but more important, an obligation to lead the way for this, for our future needs in transportation. Okay, we're going the wrong way. I think you kind of have to start with a vision, and I put together this, and this is just my thought. We can change it, but the vision would be to provide the necessary transportation infrastructure for Tarrant County in order to have an effective and efficient transportation system to benefit the residents, the businesses, and our commuters. Again, I talked about thinking multimodal. And again, it's not only moving people, it's moving goods, it's providing systems for commuters that are going to work every day, but also people that are passing through on our major freeways. So it's really a whole lot bigger than just the automobile. This gives you an example of what our growth is going to look like by 2050. Tarrant County is projected to be larger than Dallas County somewhere a little bit after 2030, between 2030 and 2035, and grow to approximately 3.6 million. Dallas County will be 3.1 to 3.2 million. The scary thing is, and I didn't show it on this, but Collin County is projected in 2050 to be the largest county in the Metroplex. It pushes at almost 4 million people. So we're going to grow. Denton County is not going to be far behind Tarrant and Dallas. So we're going to see substantial growth here over the next 30 years. So today's the time, obviously, to plan. Here's something that we face every day, and it deals with funding. As a member of the RTC, Regional Transportation Council, we make major decisions daily on where projects go and where they start and how money's allocated. Well, currently, the western region, and that's what we're in, along with Johnson, Parker, Wise, and Hood counties, we receive 31% of the money. The eastern region, which is Dallas, Denton, Collin, Rockwall, Hunt, Ellis, and Kaufman, they receive 69%. I think when you look at the future population growth and you factor in the size that Collin and Denton County are going to become, I don't think we're going to see a major change in these numbers. They're going to move a little bit, but it's not going to flip-flop. It's not even going to come anywhere near being even. And there's different ways we can divide this that have been talked about. The possibility of maybe adding some eastern counties to the western side, and, which would change the formulas. But currently today, this is what we deal with. And I think planning today is critical for tomorrow. And I think you start, again, we talked about the RTC. Transportation funding is extremely competitive because of the real and substantial needs of our citizens. In today's competitive environment, having projects ready to be constructed and what I call shovel-ready is essential. Tarrant County, we need a strategic plan for our transportation needs that catalogs the projects, their status, and what is necessary to accomplish them. We also need to bring together our project stakeholders and to help us identify, define, and prioritize the county's projects and funding. And that's not just TxDOT and the COG, but it's our partner cities using their master plans to work on. Having Tarrant County projects that are shovel-ready and ready for funding and construction is essential to our county's future. Tarrant County has right now more than $10 billion in transportation projects that need to be funded, and strategic and effective planning is essential to further those projects. This is a list of the agencies that we, on the RTC, and anybody involved in transportation gets to encounter. The United States Department of Transportation, the Federal Highway Administration, Texas Transportation Commission, the Texas Department of Transportation, the North Central Council, Texas Council of Governments, the Regional Transportation Council, the Corps of Engineers, the Environmental Protection Agency, the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, our county, affected cities, and our citizens. Here's where it kind of starts. You got a blank box there, and it's a statewide long-range transportation plan. Our goal is to have if we have a project that we think needs to be funded, and we see that in the future those improvements are going to need to be made, you want to get it in this large box with the state. From that point, sorry if y'all can y'all read that?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. From that point, it goes to another size box, which is the Metropolitan Transportation Plan or the Rural Transportation Plan. And that's the 20-year plan, and our COG, the RTC, puts together a 20-year transportation plan. We're currently working on our 2035 plan and have been for a couple of years now, and we'll continue to. From that point, you want your project then to come down into what we call the UTP, and that's the Unified Transportation Program, and that's where the state actually, you really get to the point where you're getting much, much closer to getting your project done. From that point, it goes to the statewide Transportation Improvement Program. That's where a minute order is typically issued through TxDOT, through the commission, for a project. Once that minute order is issued, and I can tell you from experience, and you can talk to people at TxDOT, typically about 40% of the projects that get a minute order actually get built. You would think 100% would get built if they've approved funding, but it doesn't work that way. And it doesn't happen in four years unless you're really on top of the project. Here's where you want to be. So you want to go from the top corner in this down to the bottom box. That's where you want to be, in that bottom box. And that's the 2-year letting schedule. And when you get into that bottom box, that's when your project, in all likelihood, will get done. I want to talk a little bit about a couple projects here in Tarrant County that got done and are being finished because, first thing is, the money wasn't there, but the plans were done, the environmental was done, and they were what we call shovel-ready. The first is the Blue project at Grapevine. That's the DFW connector. TxDOT, I showed you the box sequence. Well, the third box, which is the 10-year box, that project went from there to the 4-year box in 2000 when TxDOT issued a minute order for $550 million to do the DFW connector. Nothing happened on that project other than environmental work was being done on it. Well, the environmental work got done, and in 2009, project hadn't started, TxDOT went and got went out for bids to see what it would cost. The price had gone from $500 million to $1.5 billion. It tripled. So TxDOT went back to the contractors and said, can you kind of redefine this and give me what we can do for our $500 million, what we can do for maybe somewhere in between $500 and $1.5 billion, and we know we can do the whole thing for $1.5 billion. So they came back with plan A, B, and C, and TxDOT figured we could do B if we could only find the other $500 million. The other 500, it was actually $450 million. Well, they had no clue where it was going to come from. In 2009, the federal government created a stimulus fund. And stimulus dollars were made available through the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, ARA is what it was called. And they allocated,
More affectionately known as the Obama administration stimulus package. But go on.
thank you, Commissioner.
You have
They allocated millions of dollars to different states.
Unlike the ACA, which is Affordable Care Act.
Right.
Which is not so.
Okay, let's get back to this. Anyway, TxDOT received, I want to say, about a couple $1 billion on this project out of this money, and they started looking at projects across the state that they could fund. This one was ready to go, shovel ready. They put $250 million on this project. TxDOT was able to come up with the rest of the money, and this project was able to start in 2010. It was a 4-year project. It started in February of 2010, and this project finished this past August, 1 year and 1 month early. And it was the largest, as of today, it's still the largest stimulus package project in the United States. But that project would not have gotten done if it had not been for those ARA funds. To go a step further, this shows a little more detail of that project and where it's at in Grapevine. Because of those dollars, about a year later, TxDOT discovered they had about $15 million, a very small amount of money, left over from the ARA funds. And they're looking for a project that's shovel ready. The blue project here, Highway 26 in Grapevine from 114, which is where the DFW connector was, going back to the edge of Grapevine and Colleyville, was a project on Tarrant County's 2006 bond program for $12.5 million. $6.25 million were coming from the county, $6.25 million were coming from the city of Grapevine. Well, I'm going to tell you how we were able, because of the ARA funds, we were able to go from a $12.5 million project to 3 projects and $30 million, and the cities and the county didn't have to put any more money in. The federal government had $12 million, they put $12.5 million and paid for this project. Grapevine was able to take their $6.5 million and go put it on another project on the east side of the DFW connector called Bass Pro Drive, which was a $7 million project. They put 6. Tarrant County took 1 of the 6 we had allocated to that project on their project. So we got that project done for $7 million. And then the county was able to take its $5 million, match it with Colleyville, because they had $5 million, and the RTC put in $3 million, and we're able to do the red portion of Highway 26. So we got 13 million, 12 million, and then 7 million over on another project. All because we had projects, every one of these, engineering was done or far enough along, and the environmental was done. They were ready to move forward. And that's because there was planning done by those cities, by the county, working with the cities. And so that's how we were able to take those projects and move them forward. Stakeholder engagement. Throughout the strategic plan, the county will be able to identify and organize stakeholders and partners. The county will be able to educate legislators, business leaders, constituents, and the communities regarding the program's importance and how we can be of assistance. Public involvement is essential to project identification, development, and reducing duplication. The need for a consultant. With the amount of time, effort, and expense involved to define, prioritize, and seek funding, and reach out to our communities for the Tarrant County Transportation Plan, a consultant will be needed to lead the creation, organization, and implementation of a strategic plan. The services that are going to be needed, and this is just a few of them, but it's the creation of a strategic plan for the enhancement of Tarrant County transportation with a short-term and long-term goals. The main thing here is to identify and evaluate the possibilities of the projects, identify the funding opportunities that are available, and the funding opportunities don't always come through the RTC. So I think that's a key thing we need to keep in mind. We need to keep in communication with those stakeholders who are involved. That may mean our Congress members, our state senators and legislators, basically all the people that we would be dealing with. And that pretty much kind of wraps it up. So I would hope we would be to the point where we're ready to instruct the staff to prepare an RFQ, which I think I've been told would probably take a few months, and then we can go from there and start moving this project forward. I'll come sit down.
I am very much in favor of beginning this process to take control of our own destiny in terms of planning transportation projects. My caveat would be that I feel the same way about building highways as I feel about building jails. You're never going to be able to build enough jails to incarcerate your way out of a crime problem, and you're never going to be able to build enough highways to drive your way out of a congestion problem. We need to be looking at creative solutions in addition to building highways that would include, hopefully, a regional rail system, commuter rail system. So I hope that will be very high in the strategic planning process.
To dovetail on that, I believe that transportation is something that has been identified by members of the court as a key strategic initiative that we must be proactive in. And multimodal is something that not only Commissioner Fickes echoed about, but pretty much every transportation experts that I talk to advocate for a multimodal transportation system, multimodal transportation system. The key here is how do we get projects that are important to Tarrant County, and such projects may not be important to North Texas. Such projects may not be important to the state, and it may not be important to the nation, but they are important to Tarrant County, okay? And that is one of the major reasons why I believe Tarrant County needs to take ownership of our transportation challenges, and we need to prioritize, and we need to plan, and we need to be proactive, and we need to be aggressive in promoting the initiatives that are important to the people of Tarrant County. I understand that we have the obligation and the responsibility to be a regional team player, because highways or rail just don't stop at the boundary of Tarrant County. But we gotta work together to practice self-interest so that we can deal with the challenges that we face in the future without being limited by obstacles that we fail to see or identify. So for that purpose, I'm very much in support of this. The question here is, how are we going to do that? Do we have the internal expertise, the internal bandwidth, the internal capacity to do that or not? Or do we need to consider a consultant? So if we decided that we're going to use a consultant, then we need to have a very clear and transparent process to bring in a qualified consultant that will produce the best value for Tarrant County and the taxpayers of Tarrant County, but still being able to maintain a level of collaboration that is needed at the regional level. That is critical. So that is my comment, and I would like very much for us to take some sort of an action today, because I think we have been talking about this for the past 2 years already. So that is my comment.
The one, Commissioner, the one thing I guess that I would add or at least inject into this, Commissioner Fickus, I appreciate very much all the work that you've done on this. It's obviously you spent a lot of time on this. When we talk about the stakeholders, you mentioned the fact that it's going to be the state, it's going to be the federal government, it's going to be the cities that we have here. We have a Tarrant Regional Transportation Coalition, and that's made up, you know, the executive committee of that is made up of members from the county, from Fort Worth, from Arlington, and then from each one of the commissioners' various, I mean, there's a couple of folks on there from the north west part, there's a couple of folks from the southeast, and it at the same time also encompasses some of those outlying or contiguous counties that you mentioned were going to be necessary as we look at things other than just highways. I too want to move forward, and I think it's critical that we move forward. As your box has indicated, there's not a whole lot on the west side of Tarrant County that's in any of those boxes at this point in time. And in order to get them there, we have to identify them and then begin the process, because without them being on those plans, they're not even going to be considered from that perspective. I would like, before we decide to commission an RFP or an RFQ from just the county, that we approach TRTC and their leadership and see if there's a way that they could be the ones that would, and see if there's interest from either TRTC as a group or TRTC as individual members. And Vic Soom, who's the executive director of TRTC, is here today. And because I do believe that as we move forward, it is going to be a partnership. And as we try to find other funding mechanisms other than the state, other than the federal government, it's probably going to be just as it was in the ones that you mentioned with 26. The reason that happened is because Colleyville was willing to put up some more money with the county. And I think in many of these instances, the ability to move forward is going to be with the assistance of the approval, agreement, and assistance of the cities. A lot of it may be in just developing plans. As I see, we've got to identify the projects. Somewhere in the process, And that will be something that we'll have to communicate with all of the cities in order to do that, or entities, the T, what other projects are out there. So I think we've got to identify the projects. Some way or another, we're going to have to go about trying to prioritize them. And then once they're prioritized, along the lines of getting them shovel-ready, we're going to have to invest some cash to get those plans far enough along so that if money does materialize, or we can find places to go and get that money, that we've got the projects ready. And then we're going to have to find that funding. And I'm not altogether sure that as we go through that process, that each step in that process may involve different consultants. There may be one consultant that deals with identifying all the projects, bringing all the cities together and working through that. There may be another one that helps us bring all our partners together and prioritize and convince Fort Worth that this project in Mansfield is more important than their project in North Fort Worth, whatever it may be. And then finally, I think we've got to figure out how we're going to develop and pay for those plans. And then the people who go out and help us find funds and identify funds, whether it be at the state level, whether it be at the federal level, whether we form RMAs, whether we form TERS or local, or all of those, that may be a completely different consultant. But I really believe that instead of the county necessarily just stepping up and saying, okay, we're going to pay for all of this, I would like to at least first approach and maybe we give TRTC 30 days or 60 days. And if we're going to do an RFQ, that RFQ can probably equally be done by them. We can keep that process rolling and know that if TRTC says King's X, we don't want any part of this, then we can always bring that back in-house and move forward with it. And the only caveat I would use with that is if TRTC, which is all of the cities in Tarrant County, primarily the executive committee is made up of a representative from Fort Worth, a representative from Arlington, a representative, I believe, from Mansfield. There's two of us on there. Commissioner Fickus is the chair right now. There's a representative from up in the northwest area, as well as, I believe, Benbrook. I'm drawing some of the blanks. Vic, you might want to, I don't know who else is, Russell Laughlin is on there from the business sector. So we have representatives from really all over the county. If they were to come back and say, no, we're not interested, then I think the only thing we might want to at least consider at that point in time is if those major players are not interested in being a part of this, then are they going to be interested in providing the millions, tens of millions of dollars that are going to be necessary? Because I'm not altogether sure, maybe I'm wrong, that the five of us are going to be willing to identify and put forth what would then be tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars to make some of these projects work without the federal and the state involvement. And so that's why my thought would be, let's at least approach TRTC and ask them if they're willing to lead this effort. And again, Commissioner Fickus is the chair of the TRTC right now. If they're willing to lead it and organize it and continue to move it forward as rapidly as we would like to see it done, I would like to see us approach it from that standpoint, as opposed to just stepping out and saying, as a county, we're going to spend that kind of money without the support of our partner cities.
Glenn, when I started this process, we brought Vic on board, and Vic was very, very helpful. And much of what I've shown you today is information that Vic helped us put together and was very helpful in working with us on that. I think what the point is that when we went through our strategic planning process, we identified transportation, which I was thrilled to see identified. And I think it's important that we go ahead and start the RFQ process and see what type of proposals we get, and then work with that consultant to then, because then we've got something to sell. We've got a consultant on board, we've got something that we can go to people like TRTC and our cities here in Tarrant County and say, here's the project. I have never, ever thought that to be successful in this program, that it was going to take millions, tens of millions, or hundreds of millions to get projects done. And I only say that because my experience tells me that every project that not every, but the vast majority of the larger projects in Tarrant County, it's really more of needing somebody to work with, and I call it bird dogging these projects constantly. And it takes years, and it doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen in a year. It takes a long time. But that's a more important part of it than actually writing a check, because we'll never be able to write the checks. We know that. We pay a gas tax, and those dollars get allocated, but there are other funds that are sometimes available, and we just need to be aware of them. And when we start talking multimodal projects, I'm not so sure that Tarrant County's going about that in the right way. And when I say Tarrant County, I'm talking about the T at this point. I'm not sure that they're the solution to the rail issue. I don't know that they'll ever have the funding to do what they want to do, because they're only getting a half cent versus DART gets a full cent, and they're always going to be able to do more because they have more funds. So,
Well, I understand what you're saying with regards to projects. A lot of the projects you're referring to, the 114, some of those were projects that were done a decade ago, and that was a different time in the funding process. In 2006, we went out and the voters authorized $200 million, but they did that with the promise that the cities would be putting up at least $200 million or more based upon leveraging. And so I think we are talking, we talking about $20 million to the T.
Well, we could be.
And I don't see how we're going to, I think that's part of that partnership. How much, do you have an idea of what you're looking at as far as what this consultant?
Not really. Hundreds of thousands a year, I would think.
And see, I guess hundreds of thousands a year without talking to our partners and involving them in the selection of that consultant. I mean, I believe it's very important that if we're going to ask folks to partner in something, that I guess unless the county's just going to volunteer to spend a couple of $100,000 or $300,000 or $400,000 a year without asking anybody to partner up and to put up some dollars with us.
I see us definitely taking that step, but I think we need that consultant on board so that we can then have a basic plan that when we go to these cities and we go to our potential partners, we've got something to sell to them.
I think we can sell transportation pretty easily. I don't know of a single city or in this county that is not looking for some solution to the transportation problems they've got. Commissioner Brooks.
To me, this is about Tarrant County taking control of its own destiny. I'm reluctant to turn this process over to another regional entity. If we're going to go the regional route, we've already got regional entities that we could work with on this, the COG, for instance, the RTC. This is about Tarrant County looking out for Tarrant County and making sure that Tarrant County's interests are discreetly defined and are advocated for in an aggressive way, separate and apart from other regional concerns. I believe that if Tarrant County is the lead on this project, we can still get partners who will work with us just like they would work with the Regional Transportation Council or some of these other issues. It's not about us writing a check for hundreds of millions of dollars to fund this project or even to fund the consultant in whole. It's about us taking the lead on things that are essential to us here in Tarrant County. So I would like to see us be the lead agency on this thing and keep it in.
I think what we need now is data, information. So if we go out for a request for qualification, that will help us identify the players who may or may not have the capability to deliver the results that we are looking for. Second, in addition to the RFQ, maybe we want to consider an RFP, a request for proposal. By going through that exercise, we will be able to identify in writing the initiative, the objective, the goals that are important to us. Okay, right now, we have some documentation, but it's not official. Second, we will be able to identify the resources out there and the consultant who are willing and capable of supporting us. Third, we would be able to obtain ideas from the various subject matter experts out there in the market, telling us via an RFP process of how we would be able to achieve some of the goals that we are looking to achieve. When we have such data, that exercise will take 3, 4, 5 months. And that exercise can be completed in collaboration with Vic and his team. Once we have all the data, all the information, then members of the court, we can look at all the information and make a calculated decision on whether we need to take it to the next step or not. So my suggestion, I think, is we just be willing to go with an RFQ and an RFP process, obtain the data that we need so that we can base our future decision on the information that will be helpful in deciding whether we need to move forward or not. So that is my suggestion. Now, the fact that we go out for an RFQ and an RFP collecting information, it doesn't obligate us to bring in one consultant over another or one particular consultant or at all. We just need data right now. So that is my suggestion. I'm ready to move forward, and I'm ready to make a motion for us to do that if necessary.
I guess the only thing that I would comment about would be, Commissioner Brooks, the Tarrant Regional Transportation Council is Tarrant County. Yes, there are members from some of the surrounding counties, but it primarily is. And as far as our own destiny, there's very little unincorporated area left within Tarrant County. The plans that we're talking about are going to go through cities that are in Tarrant County, and without whose acknowledgement, partnership, and agreement, it ain't going to happen. And so I would hope that along the lines of what you're saying, if we go out with an RFQ, you mentioned with assistance from TRTC, I would hope that in the evaluation part of that process that we encourage TRTC or representatives on that executive committee to be a part of that deal, because again, I am not excited about spending hundreds of thousands of dollars of taxpayer money on a consultant that we have not at least have somewhat vented through the cities that are going to have to participate and whose cities these projects are going to go through. I'm all supportive of beginning and going forward, but we're leaving out the cities that we're going to have to partner with in this process, and I don't think we have to go about trying to sell them on the importance of doing that. I have yet to have a conversation with a mayor, with T, or with anybody else who is looking for some sort of a plan that puts everything together. What we lack right now is how we're going to prioritize those projects. In the information that was here this morning, we've done a pretty good job of identifying a lot of projects, although we've identified because they're not on the plans right now, we have identified very little on the west side of 35. There's nothing going north and south, up and down the western side of our county. There's not a whole lot going east and west to bring in through some major developments that are occurring in Walsh Ranch and in those areas.
Well, those projects came off the RTC's 2035 plan and text bond.
And that speaks to what Commissioner Brooks said.
That's where it came.
We're not focusing on what's in Tarrant County, but we need the cities and the master plans that they have to be a part of that, and I think we need them to be a part of the process of selecting the consultant. Now, and I'm all for going out for the RFP right now, and we can begin the process, but I hope that in the beginning of that process, we agree that a part of that process will be to invite them to assist us in selecting that consultant and hopefully in absorbing a little bit of the cost associated with that consultant. Because, again, I'm not excited about, we've never spent hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Well, our next
annually.
Our next TRTC meeting is March, isn't that correct? Vic? No, but that's not a meeting. When's our executive board meeting? In March? Or do we have a February meeting? Okay.
Is there any reason we couldn't call a special meeting to discuss this particular item? Could we do that in the next couple of weeks?
Okay. Of the board or the whole group?
I would start off with the executive board because I think that's where we've got representatives from all over the county. And, I think we will have a lot of support from those folks in going through an RFP process.
I think so, too. I thought it rather strange, but I received a call yesterday morning rather early from the mayor of Fort Worth expressing an interest in participating, and quite frankly, I was sort of surprised to get a call from her regarding this issue yesterday, but I think there is an interest in the city of Fort Worth,
yes.
And I think there's probably going to be an interest from a lot of the cities.
There certainly will be interest. I want to make a comment about that. I think transportation...
I was through. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, sir.
That's quite all right.
My apology. I believe that working with the cities within Tarrant County is essential. It's essential. Selecting a consultant that has no constructive relationship with the cities within Tarrant County would be counterproductive. It's kind of like hiring a CIO who isn't able to get along with the department heads and the elected officials within county would be counterproductive. I think that is obvious. That is very obvious. So with that in mind, if we go out for an RFP or an RFQ in collaboration with TRTC and the members of TRTC, so we can begin to collect the information and beginning to move the ball forward. I think that is a step that will be constructive and that is acceptable, I hope, to the members of the court, so we can actually move things forward. So I make the motion to the court that we authorize GK and his staff to begin an RFQ and RFP process in collaboration with Vic Shum and the TRTC team. So that is my motion.
I will second that motion with the understanding that, well, maybe I want to amend the motion. I want Tarrant County to take the lead on this, not the regional.
Well, I'll second his motion without it being amended.
Well, let me clarify my motion, may I?
Then you'll see which one of these seconds you end up getting.
As in my analogy, the members of the court hire the CIO. We ultimately have to make a decision. We ultimately have to be accountable and responsible to that decision that we make. But in the process of hiring that CIO, it would be prudent for us to consult the inputs of the various department heads and elected officials within Tarrant County. The same apply to this process, I believe. We should be responsible. We should take the lead and to push the project forward, but we should do so in collaboration with our cities and our partners to obtain input so that we can maintain that long-term sustainability, sustainable collaboration.
That's what I've been saying all along.
So would that motion rule out us asking anybody else to participate in this expenditure of hundreds of thousands?
Absolutely not. No, sir.
Was that a motion or a statement?
I was just clarifying my motion. Yes, sir. I don't know how you're going to be able to write that.
I don't see why all of the various folk who need to collaborate in this project and in this RFP, RQ, and RQ won't collaborate with Tarrant County as well as they would collaborate with some other agency. All I'm suggesting is that this is Tarrant County taking care of Tarrant County. Let's let it be Tarrant County. In collaboration with everybody else.
Again, and I guess my question on this, I'm ready to move forward, but my question on this is, at what point in time are we going to enlist more than just their tacit approval? When are we going to begin enlisting their dollars? If we're talking about spending hundreds of thousands of dollars from our taxpayers, when are we going to begin to give other folks the opportunity to share in that pleasure?
Immediately.
So if we're going to do that immediately, then they need to be involved immediately, because I'm not real sure that I would be too receptive to an invoice for tens of thousands of dollars upon the completion of the county doing an RF. Will we be doing an RFP or an RFQ?
Maybe both.
It'll probably be an RFQ, since consulting services like this would probably be considered a professional service. We'd have to check with purchasing and with legal, but at first glance, it'd probably be an RFQ.
I had the same discussion with the mayor of Fort Worth yesterday that you did.
Well, I had it with her last week.
And her discussion with me was about collaborating with Tarrant County.
Somebody must read those agendas you post.
Well, yes, sir. We keep talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars. Well, how much are we talking about here for a consultant? I mean, what's the estimated cost annually? Now, we're talking about probably a 20 or 25-year project. So how many hundred thousands per year for the next 20 or So years are we looking forward to?
I would envision a contract to be maybe yearly and renew every year, is what I would think.
Renew every year for 25 years.
Or 2 years, and then, you know, if we get somebody.
But how much are we talking about?
And that,
I think that's a shot at the dartboard. I don't think we'll know until we get responses.
Well,
to
then
the
let's do it and
RFP.
see how much it's going to cost, and then we'll make a decision if we want to move forward on our own, Tarrant
All
County.
we're asking for is permission to issue the RFQ or P or whatever.
And we can take this to TRTC in February and have them, we can have a, you know, we can have a board meeting and we can take it to the full group. I think that first meeting would be March. Is that right, Vic? Or if we called a special meeting. So.
so
You can take whichever one of these seconds you want.
I take both.
I don't know what the motion is.
The motion is for us to authorize the county administrator and his staff to begin the process of seeking either an RFQ or an RFP, whichever fits best for all current needs, and to begin that process.
And I second that motion. And that RFP or Q is going to have to come back to the court before it's issued.
Any other discussion? No. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Commissioner Fickus.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I
there any-
apologize for cutting you short again.
That's okay. That's all right. We got to make our speeches. That's fine.
Are there any appointments today?
Okay, I'm still waiting.
You're going to get it this week.
Today is Tuesday.
Understand.
You have before you the claims in the addendum.
Move approval of the claims, including the addendum.
Second.
You have motion and second. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Briefing items, Mr. Manius?
Thank you, Your Honor. We have two items to bring to the court this morning. The first one concerns a discussion and a briefing concerning the Staples Office Supply Contract Rebate Program. Mr. Beecham is here to address the court at this time.
Thank you for allowing me to address you concerning the Staples Office Supply Rebate Program. On December 14th, 2010, we brought before the court our recommendation to award our office supply contract for a 4-year period. We had conversations with Staples a couple years after that initial award concerning what we could do to enhance the process for the entities that are participating in our office supply contract is obviously what would be beneficial for Tarrant County. We had those conversations, and on August 28th, 2012, we brought that recommendation back to Commissioners Court, asking you to approve the contract for the last 2 additional years of that initial contract, as well as to consider a rebate program that we were proposing for all the entities as well as Tarrant County. At that time, there were 45 entities that were participating in our cooperative office supply contract. Today, we have 55 participants, and I understand several more ISDs and cities in the mix. I'd first like to acknowledge some special guests. One of the entities that participate in this contract, the Ellis County Purchasing Department, Kim Gould, if you'll stand. Ralph McBroom, whose name you remember, who worked with us for about 10 years before he left God's country to work for Ellis County. And Jody Pratt. At this time, I'd like to introduce the Staples Group, Steve Suk, the Director of Sales, Dave Gorman, the Sales Manager, and Kathy Hannon, the Strategic Account Leader. Kathy is responsible for all the office supply entities in the Metroplex, and she's a very busy and very knowledgeable and outstanding salesperson. I'd also like to acknowledge Melissa Lee and Susanna Lee, my staff, who work this contract to provide the county with what you use every day. I'll turn it over to the Staples folks.
Welcome. I like what you got. I don't know what it is, but I like it.
Thank you, Jack. It pleases the court. I'd like to spend a few minutes. Thank you for having us on the agenda today. And on behalf of the entire Staples organization, we're very pleased to present a check and rebate that shows and reflects the success of the program, both for the growth and for the compliance of all the entities. And so without further ado, I'd like to present the check for $236,150.73.
Great. That's very, very good. We appreciate you very much.
That's all money for transportation consulting.
Well, we were having a discussion between us, but I'll let the court take care of that.
But it'll get close.
One last piece of information in regards to each entity. We also will be, as we distribute funds just to those entities, when we do it at the end of the year, that will be in excess of just over $168,000 that will go to the individual entities as a cumulative amount. So
almost 400,000.
Correct.
Very good.
So,
Thank you all.
Well, I want to thank
you
you
so
and
much.
purchasing for coming up with this idea. It's wonderful.
well, it couldn't have happened without Jack's leadership and everyone from the commissioner, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jack, and your team.
Judge, can we ask you to get this picture for Staples, please?
You bet. Y'all want to come on down and let's get the picture.
All of us?
Pull this thing apart. Y'all step in there and I'm going to pull this back.
Big man.
Get it? I'm pretty good at this. I got it. Thanks so much. We appreciate you all. Thank you. Thank you. Can I just run that through the record?
Members of the court, we can go to item B, which is an update by Public Health. Mr. Jones is here to address the court at this time.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Just want to give you a quick update on influenza. The key indicator we look at are influenza-like illness counts in the county by the people who report to us. In the last week of December, it was at 10% of visits at those clinics and hospitals were influenza-like illness. In the first week of January, it went down 9.6%, and in the weekend of January 11th, went right back up to 10%. To compare that to last year, in the last year of December, it was at 10%. The next week is 11%, almost 12% in the second week. So we appeared to kind of plateaued for a couple of weeks. We'll see what it does this week when we get those numbers. Having looked at that and then looking at the state trend in ILI is down by almost 20 to 30% in the last 2 weeks. Perhaps that's good news. Perhaps we'll see a drop as well. I'm reluctant to say we've peaked because flu can also do another wave, and up we go again. Anyways, that's what we have on influenza. Statewide, we're down a bit. In the country, I believe we're about 14 states. We're still reporting widespread influenza in the country. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions you have for me.
Are there any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's the end of the briefing items. I have four audience participation.
Yes, sir. And then after that, we have that one item under work session too.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and take the audience participations, and then we'll go ahead and go to the work session. The first is an Antonio Jacobs. If you please come forward. And this item is not on our agenda today, so therefore we welcome your comments, but we cannot address or make any comments with regards to that. So I apologize for that. So go ahead, Mr. Jacobs, and if you would give your name and address to the clerk, or just speak it in there and they'll get it.
Well, my name is Antonio Jacobs, and I was asked to come speak. I was recently released from a federal institution. I've been 13 years. I did 14. I completed 14 college trades while I was there. I got out gung-ho, ready to do things and be successful. I just had a newborn baby. At 46 is my first. I'm happy about that. And I just want to start my life over again. Okay, this program that AHF has been a really good program. I don't know what's going on, but they had me speak about my experiences. When I got out, it was hard for me to get my medication together. I'm a diabetic, and I have a lot of other issues going on with myself. And this was the only program that helped me keep myself healthy so I can do the things I need to do for my family. You know what I'm saying? I'm not trying to go back. I'm not going back. And I need to stay healthy, and I really applaud this program. They like family, the doctors, the pharmacists, everybody. They do everything for us. I feel really taken care of. This program is really, really good. I appreciate if y'all would really support these guys, you know what I'm saying, because we need them. Me just getting out, I'm starting at the bottom. I'm trying to be successful. Money's out there hard. We all struggling, you know what I'm saying? Economy kind of messed up a little bit right now. So, these programs right here help. I'm a part of this program called the Next Step program. And, I have a job developer. I have a case manager. I have all of this. And they really, really, I'm trying to get back in school again, you know what I'm saying, to add to what I already have. And it's going good. I've been really blessed, you know what I'm saying, especially with these guys right here. They've been really doing a good job, and I feel that without them, I wouldn't be able to, stand up and talk or whatever. Because I'm a diabetic, you know what I'm saying? I need my medication, and it helps me.
Thank you,
These programs need to be done.
Thank you, Mr. Jacobs. We appreciate very much your comment.
Good luck to you, Mr.
Thank you.
Jacobs.
I appreciate that.
Shannon Hilgart. Good morning.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for letting me speak to you. I'm Shannon Hilgart. I live at 3932 Medford Road in Fort Worth. Been a proud Tarrant County resident since 1968. I am here to speak about AIDS Healthcare Foundation. I'm the executive director of AIDS Outreach Center. I almost said AIDS Healthcare Foundation. Surprise! They are neighbors of ours. They're in our building. They provide medical care, pharmacy services, while we provide supportive services for folks who need a little bit of help staying in care, accessing care, folks who have a hard time making their health care priority. So the relationship with AIDS Healthcare Foundation over a year now has been so beneficial to so many people that we serve. Not everybody that we serve needs somebody like AIDS Healthcare Foundation, but many people need very rapid response to their needs, or we will lose them. We have supportive services like outreach and patient navigators and case management to help people get the services they need to break down barriers to stay in care. AIDS Healthcare Foundation, while we have many great collaborations with other clinics and other support services in the area, AIDS Healthcare Foundation meets a need that others don't. And it is that if someone comes in our office today, whether expected or unexpected, and they need something from AIDS Healthcare Foundation, we can pick up the phone and call them, and they will respond to that need immediately or within the day. Whether that is we diagnose somebody, newly diagnose somebody with HIV, and they are scared out of their wits, and we can tell that if we let them out of our office, we may never see them again. AIDS Healthcare Foundation can get them in, we'll do an assessment, and we'll start up their medical care that quick. And while we have great services for medical care for people living with HIV in the county, we don't have anything that is able to be that flexible, to be that quick. So I'm just here in support of AIDS Healthcare Foundation. I know you can't respond to me, but I appreciate you hearing me and that you hearing about the needs of the people that we serve, because there is great need. Thank you.
Thank you very much for being here today.
Good to see you, Shannon.
Minerva Gonzalez. Good morning.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity that you're giving me to express my feelings and my thoughts on this matter. I was diagnosed 19 years ago.
Could I get you to go ahead and...
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Minerva Gonzalez, and my address is 2232 Terrebrook, Fort Worth, Texas.
Thank you.
I was diagnosed HIV 19 years ago in Houston, Texas, and not knowing what to expect, not knowing what to do, I was totally lost. The AIDS Foundation there sends you to so many different locations. You're just not in one spot. From Houston, I've moved to Utah. The same thing. It was the same thing. You had to go to so many different places for so many different services. It's unbelievable the things that a person like me needs. I am not also HIV, but I'm also diabetic. I'm also, have high blood pressure. I have a lot of medical issues. What I love about this coming here into Fort Worth and finding this building, on one side it is AFH, and on the other side is AOC. And that's AIDS Outreach Center. I volunteer there because I love being there. The people there are so wonderful, but they have case management, they have medical, they have the pharmacy, they have a therapist, they have a dentist, they have a food bank, they have a nutrition center, and they have a lab there. You don't have to go anywhere else but there to get all these services, and they also provide free testing. These things are so important to people like myself that you don't have to go and travel so many different places, because if you have to, 9 times out of 10 you don't want to, because you don't want to know what you're going to hear if it's going to be bad. And if the services are right there, you just go and you get it done, because you have people that are there behind you, pushing you, and you know that they care for you, and you get a rapport with these people, and you know that you can care for them and call them at any time. So if these services, if we were to lose these services, it would be heart-wrenching for a lot of people, not just for myself, but even people that come after me. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming out today. Xavier Van, is it Rossum? Thank you for coming out.
Thank you for having me. It's actually Xander Van Rossum, 4008 White Settlement Road here in Fort Worth. I am also here to show support for AHF. I came to them probably a year after their existence, and the reason why I came to them is that I was actually in a very, very bad situation. My previous clinic, if you will, had told me that I was no longer able to be on the program because they said I made too much money, which took me off the state program. So I had an option, and the option was to go into entitlement and to quit my job. That was not an option for me. The second option, of course, was to go on without medication. And the third option, of course, was to find a better paying job. Well, that was a little bit difficult. So what I did was, after a few months, and I was off of medication for 5 months, which is problematic because it develops an intolerance to medication. So what I had done was, by the fortune of the AOC group, to which I am familiar with, because you see, I was also on the board of directors of TCANE, which was successfully absorbed into AOC. So I'm familiar with what they do on the AOC side, but AHF was new to me, and so I went into them and I found a highly competent group of people, skilled, compassionate, and caring. And through all of the discovery process, it turned out that my clinic that I had gone to was in error. I was not off the state program. And I had then missed 5 months of medication. It was through these wonderful people, skilled, that put me back on. And then now I'm in a situation where not only am I with a good clinic, where there's an involvement with AOC, where they have counseling, the nutrition, all of these things are mentioned, as well as a dental clinic. What you have there is a wraparound situation. And for those individuals who are in fear, who don't really understand and know what they do, just to be contained into a building like this, you don't have to go far. Drive away and think twice. It's right there for them. I suggest that AHF gets what they need to be a viable member of the community, helping those people who need help. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your comments today. Mr. Manius, the work session.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the court, if we can now go to the work session. This is a continuation of a discussion that I believe the court began on December 27th. as it related to the County Energy Transportation Reinvestment Zone. We're going to have several different presenters. Mr. Mendez is going to begin the process.
Good morning.
Morning.
Morning. We'll try to keep this brief. Just a basic overview of how we got into this process. The legislature passed in this most recent session a piece of legislation, Senate Bill 1747, that did two things. It created the Transportation Infrastructure Fund, and it also created a subset of all the tax increment financing bodies, a County Energy Transportation Reinvestment Zone process. The Infrastructure Fund was funded late during one of the special sessions to the tune of $225 million statewide. The formula for distribution of those funds statewide was kind of complicated and had to do with the amount of oil and gas production and a bunch of other factors. The purpose for the fund is to reimburse, or not to reimburse, but to mitigate some of the damage that was created by the heavy truck traffic that is associated with the oil and gas production in the state. Based on the results of the formula, we found out in late November of this past year that Tarrant County is eligible for $2.4 million. Now, the eligibility for access to these grant funds is based on three criteria. One, that we are located in an area affected by the production. Obviously, we are. Two, we have to create a County Energy Transportation Reinvestment Zone and also create the advisory board that will advise the Commissioners Court on the use of the increment funds created by this zone. So what we've done to date is that we quickly, upon noting that we were eligible for funding, we made a request of all precincts for possible projects to be included in the grant request. We received direction from the court to move forward with this and in this process, and we published notice for the public hearing, which was held on December the 27th. Upon the completion of that public hearing, we have a waiting period of 30 days before the court can adopt an order creating the zone. This pushes us up towards against the deadline for the submission of the grant, in that that 30 days falls about a week and a half or 2 weeks before the deadline for the grant application. So as you can see, we're under the gun here to accomplish everything that is required for the access to the grant funds, and primarily today we're here to talk about is the creation of the County Energy Transportation Reinvestment Zone, the CTERS as we refer to it.
So is the 25th the day that we could effectively do it? Are we going to try to do this next week?
Well, the earliest date that we can do it is the 28th, is next week. It doesn't look like we're going to have everything ready for the adoption. We could, possibly, but...
We're looking at an action item of the court on February 11th.
Which gives us then 4 days to finalize the grant application and get that to TxDOT. The point where we're at today is, in seeking direction from the court on the final piece of this, is that we need to know whether or not we're going to create more than one zone. We need to know whether or not we're going to put more than one project in that zone. We need to have a discussion about the road condition reports that are required as part of the grant application process. And we've come up with several recommendations to address these issues. Let me hand these out. What I'm handing you is two things. We have a list of projects that has been generated by your precincts, and staff has listed these in order of priority, listing the first 4 projects being the top priority in each one of the precincts, the second 4 is the second priority, so on. So we have a total of 12 projects here. As you can see, the total value of those projects is approximately $8 million. We were encouraged to submit more than we are initially eligible for because it is likely that counties around the state will not seek their funding, and therefore there will be a surplus amount of money that we may have access to at a later date. So we feel that this adequately covers that. What we next need to do is talk about recommendations that we have for the court to consider. There are, let me hand out one more sheet. Because we have to have a zone in order to get access to the funds, and one of the projects that we submit for the grant application has to be within that zone, and we have such a short timeline, staff is recommending that we only create one zone, that we only put one project within that zone, that the required road condition report that we work with staff and the transportation staff works with precinct staff in order to come up with the appropriate format and how everything needs to be worded for the grant application process. As far as which project, consideration for the project to be included in that zone, we are looking at a limited length of the road segment that will be included, a limited scope and project costs so that we will be able to address that very quickly, and a limited number of property parcels to be included in the zone to make it easy for our partners at TAD to keep track of this and to make it a quick thing that we can identify that has to be a part of all of this grant submission process and to be included in the court order creating the zone. Kind of complicated, but I think we've come up with some recommendations that meet that criteria, and we've come up with 3 projects in the county that meet those qualifications. One being Morris Dido Road, one being Lemons Road, and the other being Wilson Road. And I'd like to have Lisa come and talk about the projects that we've identified.
The 3 possible road projects that the Transportation Department has identified, and I think working with your precincts, were the Morris Dido, Wilson Road, and Lemons Road. And you see these on the maps we've included here. What we have looked at doing then is create a zone, a reinvestment zone like we do with TIFs, that would include that right-of-way, the full length, that would encompass the section that the road project would be, and would take in only a portion along one side of the right-of-way that would fit in to what the zone requires, which is to have land in the zone that is unproductive, underdeveloped, and would be prime for potential in the future to develop and produce increment. Whether it does during the time that we have the zone or not, it doesn't really matter, but it needs to be a block of land that's not really developed right now. So we have identified, and along each of these roads, large tracts that would benefit from the road being improved and could have development occur in the future. So we will be looking at those zones. Once the chosen zone, then we would form a zone that would include along that right-of-way, that particular piece of property. So,
You recommend that Tarrant County create only one service,
correct.
but you recommend 3 projects. So are you saying that we should build one service, choose one of those 3 projects and build a service around it?
Correct.
Is that what you're saying?
And I'm going to let Bill and Mark address that a little bit more. I think the question is going to be which area is the best to create the zone, which is going to be quickly move forward so that we can get the road project done most effectively, efficiently, and quickly within the zone that we develop. So I'm going to let
The funds that we get, if we were to get $8 million, they can be used anywhere in the county as long as we have one
project in a zone.
and the money to complete that project. Does it?
That also comes from the grant money, but then if there is any increment, so say we set the zone this year, and in 2015, 2% increase in just land price because of the piece of land. So we get maybe $2,000. That $2,000 increment has to be spent then toward that road project within that zone.
Within that road project? Now, what if we've already finished the project?
It can be spent on administrative costs also for administering that
And
zone.
how
of that
long does that
project.
CERT stay in existence?
It stays on the books for 10 years or until that project within that zone is complete. So once that project is complete, we can dissolve the zone. But we still have access to the grant funds.
So we would get the $8 million, we would complete the project, and then terminate the service.
Correct.
Maybe before there's been any increase in value.
Correct.
And that's illegal.
All right.
Okay. A couple of questions. We've listed $8 million. We've listed, whatever this number is, 12 projects here. Those are the only, if we get money, those are the only 12 projects we can work on. Is that correct?
In this round of the grant.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Okay. If we finish the project that's in the actual CTERS or whatever it's called, we finish that job and we do away with that CTERS, do we have to do we need to have spent all of our $8 million before we do away with it, or just that one project?
Establishing the CTERS and having the CTERS gives us access to the money. Once they have granted us the money, if that particular project terminates before we've expended all the money, it doesn't shut off the funds. I mean, because this is a reimbursement grant. We're just getting reimbursed for the work we've completed.
Okay. Aren't they doing the same thing next year?
Possibly.
I thought they had the money for 2 years.
Well, it is money for the biennium, so we have 3 years to expend the funds.
But are they issuing another $225 million a year from now?
We won't know that until the next legislative session and the appropriations process.
The answer to that question is no. The $225 million is for the biennium, which is for these upcoming 2 years.
Okay.
That's what the question was.
Okay.
I thought they had double that amount. It's $225 a year.
No, sir.
No.
Okay.
We can make some additional comments. I think several points that the judge had asked about, and also Commissioner Fickus. And what we're looking for is a fairly small roadway that will meet the requirements of the statute. We want to submit at least $8 million worth of projects. If there are additional projects that we want to substitute we can do that, but we'll have to submit those to TxDOT for their approval before we can simply substitute those. When we looked at these three projects, one of the things that we looked at was, and I want to talk a little bit about the Morris-Dido issue. They've been working on that project as far as engineering is concerned. This thing is getting ready to be what Commissioner Fick has referred to as shovel-ready. So this is something, if the court determines that we want to use Morris-Dido as that project within the term, then we can do that. We know that we're going to be doing this road fairly quickly because we've already done some work on it, and as soon as we get the money, we can initiate that construction piece.
Mark, do you have the list, the county list of how much each county gets? Do you have one of those with you?
Yes, sir.
Just see it.
Yeah, a lot of that money is going to some smaller counties. I think $8 million is probably submitted enough, but I'd sure hate to get to the point where we might have been able to get even more than $8 million.
You know, Bear County decided not to do it.
Really?
Yeah.
Commissioner Fickus, are you looking for the list of counties and how much they get? Is that what you?
Just check, what is Bear County? Do you have it there?
I don't have it.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
Bear County's getting $473,000.
Bear County?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Your larger urban counties, for the most part, are probably not getting, maybe other than Harris. What's Harris at?
Harris County didn't have very much at all. What, 750,000?
That just means that if some of those smaller counties, now that may be where, you know, Jim Allison going in and helping them, they'll go ahead and apply for that. Because some of these smaller counties, you're talking about several million. I think your biggest one was
5, I think.
Here's Andrews County getting 8.7.
Okay.
Yeah. Midland County got $5 million.
I think what we can do is, I would support the Morris-Dido as the driving project to build the suds around, if that's okay with Commissioner Jetty Johnson, because it is his precinct after all. Second, I think we can add more projects to it just in case, right? It wouldn't hurt?
Yes. What we did here was simply took the top 3 priorities of each of the precincts, created a list of 12, and that put us at the $8 million mark. If there are projects we can substitute, well, then we simply have to submit that to the TxDOT.
Okay, so we're going to add more projects. Okay.
How much more do we want to set a dollar amount?
Judges and commissioners.
Do we want to set a dollar amount of which we would like to submit at least on our list? Right now, we're at 8 million. Do we want to say, let's put enough projects on there till we get to at least 10, or are we satisfied with 8? I mean, I hear you saying you'd like to submit a few more.
Because
just to make sure.
Just to make sure, right? We have nothing to lose.
There's nothing that would penalize us for submitting
More.
actually the entire list.
The entire list we got originally from the precincts was upwards of $20 million.
Unless the court sees a reason to specifically reduce that amount, I'm not sure. I wouldn't go ahead and submit the whole thing. I sure don't want to end up not, as long as it doesn't require anything more from an administrative standpoint and is not going to hurt our ability to do that. It's my understanding that if they're going to take the amount that was not applied for and they're going to reallocate that based upon the amount that was. And it's going to be based upon what their original allotment was. So it doesn't seem as though we could get harmed by submitting everything we got.
So I don't see any downside in
There really
submitting the
isn't.
whole 20 million.
I don't believe there is.
It's just staff time to put together the submission packet.
Yeah, as long
Make
as
sure
we have
get
the
it in time.
priority, you know, we have the priority on those projects.
Well, and
And
here's
we can set the priority back when we get, if we get that money, we can set the priority.
the only priority on this, a requirement on this, actually there's 2. One is that the project that you have in the TUR, you have to do, okay? Because that's what the TUR was built around.
Right.
The second thing is that the other priorities can be drawn however the court wants them to. It's not something we have to submit. However, it has to be within the projects that we do submit. So if we expand that list to the entire list, then we can pick and choose, basically.
And then we would have to appoint the board. Does the board have to be appointed before this February 11th date?
Yes.
We have to create the board. The specific appointments, it would be good to have that in place, but the statute only calls for the creation of the board, however you want to interpret that.
Okay.
And that requires, if I'm correct, it requires 2 public members and up to 3 individuals who are from the oil and gas business. That's a recommendation from the county judge to the Commissioners Court. Judge, you make the appointments, but they have to, those appointments need to be approved by the Commissioners Court.
Who drew these maps? Transportation?
Yes.
On Morris Dido, why did you stop before you got to FM 718?
Well, actually, that map is wrong. As far as the limits of that project, they would put on the map wrong. The limits of that project actually is, there's 2 red dots on there, and that's the limit of the project that we presently got plans on.
Dots?
Yeah, there's kind of some,
Maybe that's it.
No, we missed the red dot.
that's the limits of the project.
Okay, so just.
Oh, red dashes.
Yeah. A squish dot. How's
A
that?
squished dot?
That's it.
Okay. A flattened dot. We took a dot and we flattened it.
That's
Okay.
it.
So that short distance is all that's included?
In that project that we have plans on right now, which was estimated at, I can't remember what the, $300-something thousand. $372,000.
That's one that we've got engineered and planned to do anyway, isn't it?
That's correct. The utilities are finishing up right now as far as the relocation.
All right.
Shovel-ready.
The direction that we need from the court today is, first of all, we want to create 1 TERS, including 1 project, and also which project that you want to include in that. That way, we can begin the process of putting the TERS together. The second thing, and something we need to talk about, is that we're going to need the help of all 4 precincts in creating this road
Condition report.
road condition report. It's a very old statute. We actually have to, it has to be submitted by each commissioner to the grand jury. That's what the statute calls for. They don't do anything with it. They just have to, statute requires that it needs to be sent to the grand jury. We've already worked with legal in the process that we can do that. We just simply need to get the reports put together. That's a requirement that we need to have in order to submit our application. And then, Judge, if you would think about the people that you want to appoint to that advisory board. Now, that advisory board does not tell us which projects we have to fund. They simply advise the court. The court is the one who makes the decision as to what projects get funded, except, of course, for that project that's listed in the TIF, or the TERS, and then we have to do that project.
How many people are on the advisory board?
It can be up to 5. 2 of them have to be public members, and 1 or more has to be a representative of the oil and gas industry. Is it 1? Yeah.
Or is y'all's preference 5 or something less than that? 3 to 5 is what we got.
3 to 5?
Yes, sir.
Can it be 1 from the oil and gas and 2 from the public?
Yes.
That's the way it ought to be. My opinion.
Everybody okay with that?
Yes, sir, I am.
So you're looking for 3 people. Okay. So the conversation today centers around just, you want some direction as far as I hear direction with regards to the Morris Dido. Are we authorized to take action?
Yes.
I have a motion.
I have a motion. I make a motion to build one search around the Morris Dido Road because it's shovel ready.
I'll second.
A motion is second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Please indicate that Commissioner Brooks is not present.
We just simply ask the commissioners that if you will let your directors of field operations know that we'll be needing to work with them to create this needs of this road condition report.
We need to get this done in 1 week.
I would think we would need to do it, what we need to do, we have to have it completed and submitted to the grand jury no later than the first week of February.
This is supposed to be done annually.
It's,
Doesn't transportation already have, I was reading the instructions on what you're supposed to do, but don't you already have all of the road signs? A list of all the road signs on all the county roads?
We have a lot of data pertaining to that, yes, as far as how much.
You have a lot? You don't have it all?
I'm not sure. It's the information that's been provided to us by the precincts through the years and so forth. I don't know if it's all, but probably the majority of them.
Okay.
Commissioner, we have some work to do on this. at
I
staff
realize that.
And so we'll start hitting it no later than tomorrow. We're
Are
already
there-
starting to put some of the material together.
I want to go back to this advisory board for just a second. Are there formal meetings that are required for this advisory board to have?
It is suggested that they meet no less than quarterly.
There are no requirements, though.
There's nothing in the statute under the requirement, but in the
In
briefing
order to have
session.
a meeting, they'd have to have a quorum of,
Yes.
they'd have to have a quorum present.
Yes, sir.
Quorum would be 2.
I guess that would be 2 versus 3 from that standpoint. Okay.
Thank you. That's all going to occur on February 11th.
Yes, we're bringing all this back on the 11th for formal action on creation of the zone.
What our goal is, as we develop this, I know that the 11th looks a little bit far out, but we'll be working with each of you on this to make sure that there's no surprises. And this is a process we simply have to go through in order to qualify for the $2.4 million. By the way, and listening to the tape and watching it on the web, this is a reimbursement program. In other words, we have to submit bills to TxDOT and they'll reimburse. Also, it requires a 20% match.
Is there any rules against supplanting?
Against what?
Supplanting? Well, I mean, you indicated you've already got that project budgeted. Sometimes the state basically says you can receive funds from us, but you can't use those funds to supplant funds that are already being used or for.
I know there's a requirement that we're not allowed to be reimbursed for projects that have already been completed, but I did not see anything on the supplantation issue. We can check that.
The only reason I say that is that the project that we have picked, he may already have completed by the time this comes around, and I want to make sure that that's not an issue that then would void our ability to qualify.
TxDOT is supposed to have an answer on yes or no on our grant application within 60 days, and no work can be done on the project.
Well, he's telling us, I think he mentioned, Commissioner Johnson.
Work out there right now. We're having the the utilities moved, and we haven't, well, we've cut some trees and things down on the project, but
We'll double check that. We'll double check that.
Let us just run that trap. I don't think it's going to take us a long time to create the TERS, so we'll have answers for you next week.
Well, let's just, why don't we just prioritize the projects for the creation of this entity to be the three that you've listed in the order that you've listed them. And if you explore that and determine that because of the stage we're in with Morris Dotto, that might not be our best project, then
we can
move to the next one, because I don't want to, if we're only going to do one, we can't afford for that one zone to get kicked out 60 days later and then we not be eligible for any funds.
Okay. We'll go ahead and we're going to prioritize some more Morris Dotto, but if that, after talking to TxDOT, if that's an issue we have to slip down to the second one, we'll simply do that. Now, all these are preliminary votes anyway, and the real vote is going to be on February 11th.
Is there any limitation on how we can use this fund, for example, drainage and so forth?
All of that complies. Work on the culverts, work on signage, any of that applies.
Okay, all that is good.
I think with the application there, they do want kind of a scope attached to each one of the projects as far as exactly what we're going to do. But I think I've got that pretty much from y'all as far as in your estimates. We can tell what the scope of the project is as far as what kind of different items it involves.
But it's primarily to maintain maintain the road as a result of the damage done by this.
Yeah, it's mainly rehabilitation of a project which most of the precincts do right now.
Thank you, court members. Your Honor, that's all we have at this time.
At this time, we will recess our open meeting and proceed to close to discuss items exempted under sections 551, get this one out, 551071. Having returned from our closed session and there being no business to conduct at this time, we are adjourned.